to order for the Town of St. John Town Council Study Session for August 21st, 2024. If we could have roll call, Beth?
Gerald Swatz.
Present.
Christian Jorgensen is absent. Mike Bovat.
Present.
Wayne Pondinas.
Present.
Ann Oster. Present. Bill Manasopoulos.
Here.
Joe Svetnoff.
Here.
And Beth Hernandez, present.
Thank you. Item 3 on the study session, the tree ordinance. Billy?
The tree board is requesting some changes to the tree ordinance. They have a new approved list of species that they want added and removed because of some of them are invasive. They would also like to see the memorial tree fee raised from the $500 to $1,500. That's with the town making no money on it, just breaking even.
Are you saying it would take $1,500 for a memorial tree?
The plaques are $500, and the cost for the tree and putting it in is right around $1,000.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns on that? And are they wanting to redo the ordinance, Billy? I mean, is there verbiage that they want to add to it, or?
Yeah, they're gonna amend the ordinance.
Okay. And do they have like a rough draft or anything at the time?
Go ahead, Ashley.
So the trees, the species, and the landscaping requirements are all part of the zoning ordinance, so that's gonna be something I'm requesting the plan commission to advertise for the public hearing at our meeting tonight, so that we can get it on the September agenda to amend it. I will likely be working with Adam Decker on amending that section of the zoning ordinance.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any other questions?
So, as the ordinance stands now, it says they would like to have an installation for a donation of $1,500. The donation includes tree and a plaque to be installed near its base. Does the ordinance now include the plaque?
So that is part of the parks area. That one falls completely under the town council, the way I'm reading the ordinances. Just the parkway trees and the landscaping requirements fall under the zoning. So
Okay.
the third and fourth page of that packet, I believe. Oh, it's not on there. So the memorial trees itself are just, they fall under, when I looked it up, they fall under, park information. The parkway trees that they're wanting and the landscaping requirements they're wanting, those fall under the, Appendix I in the zoning ordinance, and then the landscaping requirements is chapter 13 of that ordinance.
Jerry, I think they're talking about two separate things, what you're asking.
Yeah.
So currently, the memorial tree, we charge $500 for the donation, and it includes the tree, installation, and a plaque.
That was my question.
The problem
Okay.
is that the cost of those three things exceeds the 500, so
Okay.
it's closer to the 1,500 mark. So I believe they're looking just to increase it so that we don't lose money and just recoup what we put out.
I was wondering if the plaque was included in the
Yep.
current program.
It is for both the tree and the bench, whichever route somebody chooses to go. The plaque is included.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ashley. Item 4, America in Bloom. Billy?
The tree board is asking to become part of American Bloom. It's an organization with resources. It's a one-time cost of $1,900 that would give them access to a certified arborist to check on trees, health of trees, and give advice moving forward on trees throughout the town. And again, it's a one-time fee of $1,900. They also will be hosting like best on block, as far as curb appeal to houses. So they're in the process of getting that information to us also.
When they say it's a one-time cost, I was just gonna ask, like, what's the stability of the corporation? Like, have they been there like 5 years, 10 years, like?
So other than us, Munster and Dyer are also part of this organization and have been for a couple years now. As far as how long they've been around, I can get you that info
Okay.
later on today.
But the other communities have partnerships with them also?
As far as, our neighboring communities would be Dyer and Munster.
Okay.
And Bill, when you say one-time fee, is that once a year or a one-time lifetime?
One time, lifetime.
Okay.
And does anybody happen to know, kind of like, is that something that, a resource that's kind of like looked into often, do you know?
So I can tell you offhand, I had to call an arborist twice. They'll be coming out next week to check out a couple trees that I wasn't certain on. And that'll probably cost us a couple $100 each time. So overall, the cost is worth it.
Mr. President,
Yes.
if I may, at the town of Maryville, Matt Lake, who's a stormwater director out there, is very adept in like arborists and arbor situations such as these. He's even made Maryville an arbor city where they get trees, like 1,000 trees a year, saplings and things like that. That's maybe something that Billy may want to contact Matt Lake on, and to be designated, have a designation such as that. And I don't know if if he can have an arborist or if they can share resources or whatever, but it might be a collaborative effort on both their parts, or at least a good source of information for arbor questions.
Excellent. All right, thank you for that, Joe.
Sure.
Any other questions, comments? Item 5, Little Rascals. Billy?
Little Rascals, I'm gonna turn this over to Ashley.
So the current Little Rascals property there off of Hart and Thielen, they are seeking a rezone from industrial to C1 business district. The reason for that is they're looking at subdividing it, making it a legal 2-lot subdivision, and expanding the daycare facility there. Right now, it is zoned industrial with residential around there. That doesn't seem like a good fit. The C1 is more of a better use, and it allows them to expand that business and make it a bigger daycare facility for the area. So they are up for their public hearing tonight at the Plan Commission. I wanted to get this in front of you in case a recommendation is made tonight and you see it on your agenda next week.
I'm just curious, maybe you could help us, Audrey. Have they ever tried to do this in the past, or is this a new direction they're going in? Anybody know?
I think it's going to be a new owner's going to be taking it over, and this is a new direction they're going in. They're planning on demolishing most of the existing buildings and building a brand new daycare facility on there. It has been reviewed with public safety so that they could have feedback on what that building is going to look like and how public safety can best serve that property.
So it is new owners, and exactly like Ashley said, all the buildings will be knocked down. They will be in use while the first building is being built, and then they have a future plan for expansion on the third building, but that's a couple years down the line.
Bill, that's not on 41. Is that on 41?
No, Little
Oh,
Rascals.
it's back over here.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Yes.
the industrial use, though, if we can get rid of that into a commercial use, that'd be very beneficial to the town, specifically where that land's located. You really don't want an industrial use there in case someone else would buy the property and decide to capitalize on the industrial use. It wouldn't be a good fit there,
Okay.
so.
Make note of that, Ashley. Thank you. Thank you again, Joe. Any other questions, comments? Little Rascals. Moving to item 6, Klein Avenue update.
We have American Structure Point here for an update.
Brought everyone some reading material.
Gee, thanks.
Billy, is that mic on for the?
Hope you keep asleep.
Thank you.
Sure.
Good morning. Eric Wolverton. I'm with American Structure Point. I also have Gina Sessions, who's a project development director and team leader with our company as well. After our last, as required, we're using federal funds for the engineering on this project. So as a requirement of that, there's some quarterly tracking meetings that the town manager and myself have been attending. After the last one, we thought it'd be a good idea to come in and maybe give an update to the council as where we're at with the project. So with that, maybe I'll start with a little history. Back in 2020, we were approached by the town to assist with some funding applications for not only the Klein Avenue extension, but also some trail projects. The Klein Avenue extension was successful, largely due to the fact that NRPC, Northwest Indiana Regional Planning Commission, our local MPO, had done a regional corridor study in 2016. In 2016, they looked at missing gaps of roadways in their region, which is Lake Porter and LaPorte counties. And based on a bunch of different variables, came up with the most important missing gaps, we'll call it, within the region. And Klein Avenue extension ranked very high. Because of that, it helped the project score really well at NRPC, and we were able to secure some funds for the project. So fast forward to today, we got under contract with the town back in 2021 for engineering, and we are currently moving forward with the design at about, I would say, 25–30% complete stage. What you have in front of you now, the very large document, is a draft, but it is an alternatives analysis. And based on federal funding requirements, when utilizing their construction funds or any of their funds, we have to go through the NEPA process, which is the environmental document process. In doing so, you have to identify several different alternatives for the roadway to be able to prove that your preferred alternate is meeting the purpose and need of the project. So kind of the building block for that is this alternatives analysis report that I did print copies off and brought those obviously for you guys to be able to review. I don't anticipate you doing all that in the next 5–10 minutes here, but also in front of you is some very schematic roadway layouts for the project, which obviously extends from 101st to 93rd. And so with that, Gina, did you want to provide any design updates? Really just wanted to answer any questions, come in and answer any questions that you may have. I know you're probably aware of the project that was going on, but we have not sat down and actually discussed that. Definitely did want to get the alternatives analysis report in front of you to see the process that we're currently going through, but then also be here to answer any questions that you may have in terms of cost, timeline, those type of things.
Yeah, so I'll just touch on the alternatives analysis. It is a very large document, so as Eric mentioned, as you guys read through it or have any questions, we're available to come back and answer those questions. Its length, the intent of the project is to provide connectivity from 93rd and 101st, but as Eric mentioned, when going through the environmental document process, we have to make sure we are checking every possible alternative. So within the analysis, we looked at the existing condition, taking 93rd to Plain and over to 101st. So we thoroughly analyzed that. If we were to utilize existing corridor, we would have greater impacts on right-of-way, wetlands, and kind of outline those things. That way our environment, we're satisfying the needs of our environmental document, looking at the existing condition. And then the preferred alternative, because of the funding, would be to provide the connectivity straight shot down Klein, continuing Klein Avenue instead of jogging over to Blaine. So we've analyzed that corridor and additionally analyzed what to do at the intersections. So whether it's stop controlled, signal controlled, or roundabouts. So those are all alternatives to the alternative and alignment analysis. And then along the alignment itself, there are multiple bridge options to cross Beaver Dam Ditch. So there's a three-sided structure, there's a long span structure, and then there's a shorter structure. So there's many alternatives on the alternatives. So I'm sure you'll all have questions as you're reviewing those. The document is, like Eric mentioned, needed for our environmental document. So we're at a stage now with design that we can move forward with our environmental investigation. And while that's happening, then we'll reconvene with the group to go over the many alternatives to figure out what is best for the town.
I forgot to mention as well is that when the town secured the federal funding for this project, that is at an 80-20 split, so 80% federal, 20% local. And that will continue. Right now, we obviously have an engineering contract with the town. We're proceeding with those engineering. All those funds are being paid for at 80-20. As we move into the next steps, which would be right-of-way acquisition and then ultimately construction, those will also be funded at an 80-20 split through NERC, our local MPO.
So when we initially applied for the grant through NERC, did the construction details were included in that bid process?
We had assumed, so with the funding application, we had to include a similar, not as detailed alignment as
Okay.
this, but we included an alignment, the same typical section. So it was a 2-lane roadway. There's a two-way left turn lane once you go south of Beaver Dam Ditch. So all of those details were included. We also included the 2 roundabouts at the northern and southern.
Okay, and so if we make any changes to that, do we have to go back to NERC to make sure that we can maintain that 80-20 split?
It would probably depend on the scope change. So if you didn't want roundabouts, that's something we would have to go back and, revisit with NERC.
So that would be important for us to know before we make a decision, so,
Similar with if the town decided to improve the existing corridor versus construct the connection, then that
Right.
would obviously not meet what we had said in the funding application,
Okay.
providing connectivity.
so you're really not making any recommendations to change, you're just showing the options and alternatives that are required for your process.
Correct.
And the environmental process, we have to study the entire limits.
Right.
So we're trying to identify what those limits are.
Okay, thank you.
A question, and this first drawing here, are these property owners aware of the potential of a roundabout? Or this is just in the early
This
stages?
is something
Okay.
that, through this process, we're not at a stage where we would really present any of this to the public.
Okay.
And/or expose it to the public, so, no, not at this time.
Okay.
Through the environmental process, as we move through that, one of those requirements are public information and public hearings. At that time, those things get shared with the public.
The roundabouts were laid out to avoid as many parcel impacts as possible. So they're shifted in a way to, instead of taking multiple homes, it's favoring one side of the street. So as we get into design and have those design discussions with the group, if we need to try to shift a roundabout one way or another, those changes can be made.
Is there a timeline for the spending? Is there a deadline that NERC and the federal government, is there anything that they're saying that if you're going to proceed, like is there a start-stop date? Is there any kind of information on that?
So we are heavily involved at NERC, and so I can tell you that their spending plan, which only looks out for 4 years, is completely filled up right now, which is okay. It aligns probably pretty well with the timeline of this project. As we go through the NEPA, the environmental process, you're looking at least a 2-year process. The next step would be working with NERC to secure the right-of-way funds. And so as we get out towards the tail end of their spending plan, we can work with them to leverage that. But in terms of construction, utilizing NERC funds, you're probably looking at out in 2029, 2030, before they're going to have the funds that they're allocated and dedicated for this project.
So this is kind of like, you're looking quite a ways down the road then? Okay.
Yeah, the federal process it's a lengthy one, and it continues to get longer, unfortunately. But it's nice to have that 80-20 split to be able to offset the cost of a project of this magnitude.
I do want to note, though, the 80-20 split is a reimbursement grant, so we are putting the money out first as far as budget is concerned. So through the budget process, we need to budget 100% of it and wait for the 80% back.
And then typically, how long, Beth, does it take to,
I mean, they're timely.
Yeah, they're usually fairly timely, 30 days.
Yeah.
Under 30
Okay.
days. The one exception, that's a good point to bring up. The one exception to that is when you're looking way out, once you get to construction, NDOT would put the project out to bid, receive bids. At that point, as long as the bids are within the engineer's estimate, they'll send a bill to the town for 20% of the construction amount, and that has to be paid up front for them to draw off during construction. So that's the only exception to the reimbursement process that was mentioned. So that's something, you know, as the project progresses, we refine estimates, we know when we're gonna go to letting, we can work with the town to be prepared for that.
I know you're exploring a lot of options and details, so when would you envision maybe this starting?
The actual construction process,
Yeah, you know, getting things, all your ducks in a row, and,
I would say fiscal year 2030, which would be the summer of 2029.
okay. All right. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you, Eric, and young lady, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Item 7, social media archive. Billy?
So we have two quotes for the social media archive. One is Civic Flex, which that we're using, came in at $7,188. Mark from IT did a search and found us Page Freezer at a lower cost. So we're gonna look at the meeting to go ahead and get an agreement with Page Freezer.
What is this for, social archive?
Yeah, our social archive, the back, yeah, the backup.
Oh, okay.
And Bill, is there a reason we have to archive or, like,
Yeah, I mean, anything that's on there, we're required to keep records of it.
state law or?
Yeah.
Okay,
And under public access laws, you're required to keep it.
all right.
And under records retention through the state, through state archiving.
Do we know how many years we have to keep?
There's a schedule actually out that I'm gonna try to get a copy of for you
Okay,
that tells you, do you have the schedule?
We have a copy of the retention schedule.
Okay.
We can email that out.
Great.
okay. All right, anything else, Billy?
No, not on that.
All right, thank you. No other questions? We'll move to 8, new ambulance.
At the meeting, Chief Adams will present a plan of getting a new fire engine. He is getting together all the numbers on our oldest one. I know we just took one in, but one of our older ones is nickel and diving them. So,
Engine or ambulance?
ambulance.
Okay.
I'm sorry, did I say engine?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Ambulance. So a commitment letter would be needed to sign. Again, getting all those numbers, obviously what it's costing him on our oldest one, and then move forward from there.
So what year would we take delivery?
27, I think he told me back.
26, you had mentioned.
26, I'm sorry.
There's quite a lead time on that too, right?
That's what the letter of commitment is for.
All right. Any other questions? Item 9, shops on 96th Street settlement. Billy?
I'm gonna turn that over to Joe.
All right,
Thank you.
Joe?
As consistent with the direction of the council last time and from the information I had presented to you, which was an opinion letter drafted by Adam Decker and agreed upon with myself, we've reached out to Shops in 96, the developer and his attorney, Kevin Steele, and we've come up with a settlement settlement agreement regarding the inverse condemnation, the taxes that were erroneously paid by the developer, and for reimbursement of costs. So that's coming in at about $60,900, I think $60. So that would be the settlement amount. There is a 2-page agreement that has been circulated, I think, to everybody here regarding that settlement. If we do settle, that's going to settle any and all claims having to do with the Shops on 96 project. But I will tell you that we face exposure on that inverse condemnation claim if it does go to court. So. And so it's my recommendation that we enter into the settlement agreement and proceed forward and get that chapter out of the way.
Can you kind of comment, Joe, how many years does this entail?
How many years?
Taxes, yeah,
It was like a span of 3 years, I think. There was a detailed explanation by Adam Decker within the letter, the opinion letter, and then there was a further reconciliation done by Kevin Steele, the attorney for the developer, kind of laying out costs expended, and basically the only thing that has changed from the opinion letter to the reconciliation that was provided by the attorney was the increase in attorney fees and the increase in interest costs. So,
You know, had they reached out to the town prior to the 3-year period here?
they had reached out in, I think, 2021 and 2022, trying to get the situation settled. And at that time, I guess there was a breakdown in communication. So this has come back up to light, and I definitely wanted to bring it to the council's attention before we would face some type of litigation claim on this.
Appreciate that. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you for that, Joe. Without anything else, item 10, adjournment. We're adjourned.